This is Pastor Chuck Blair. We're going to keep marching on here. And again, hope you had a wonderful Easter Sunday with your family. I know we sure did out here. So what I want to talk about today is one small act of compassion. And this is one if you did watch Sunday's service, I did address, but I wanted to talk about it a little more. And I thought what we would do would be actually we would finish up the Easter story. So sort of look at the post-Easter story, because that's a fascinating one. So we'll be doing that over the next couple of weeks. And it'd be interesting, right? If there was a Lenten thing that went that way too, would be fun, where we were building more and more joy and relief and excitement, all that. That's just a thought. So the part I want to talk about that really frankly didn't occur to me all these years studying it, really didn't occur to me until this Easter was this beautiful line in John where Jesus says, like, it is finished. And the context of this is beautiful. I want to read it to you and then tie it into this one small act of compassion. And again, we did talk about this yesterday, but I wanted to flesh it out a little bit. Later that evening, knowing that everything had now been finished, and so the scripture would be fulfilled, Jesus said, "I am thirsty." A jar of wine vinegar was there, so they soaked a sponge in it, but put the sponge on a stalk of the hyssop plant and lifted it to Jesus' lips. When he had received the drink, Jesus said, "It is finished." With that, he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. So as I mentioned yesterday, that was this one small little act of compassion. And it's fascinating to juxtapose some of these things, and I think really carries some big lessons for us. As noted, Jesus's last temptation, which we talked about last week, actually on Good Friday, the last temptation of Jesus was hopelessness. Just this, it's never going to work. People are way too corrupt, very jaundiced. And boy, we can get that way. At least I can get that way in a hot second. It just doesn't take much. And again, that's my ego being in charge, and it will find evidence to prove that situations are hopeless. Just not a good place to be. And imagine a lot of you have been there. Maybe some of you on this call even are there today. So what I wanted to talk about here was just, this idea that within that hopelessness came this one small, little, tiny act of compassion. I mean, a beautiful act of compassion. And this wine or vinegar and different biblical accounts, different gospels handle it different ways, but it was all with the same gist, that this was considered back then, pretty poor excuse for a painkiller, but it was considered some sort of painkiller. Now, folks, when you look at crucifixion, the idea that the Romans were going to do anything to alleviate pain is crazy. That's just, I can tell you as a historian, that's just not true. That's not what crucifixion was about. It's about actually incurring the most amount of pain that could possibly be incurred. So this little act of compassion is really significant. And it's interesting, and again, from a Christian New Church perspective, this is where we're supposed to sort of do the Jewish tradition of midrash and look at a story and really try to pull it apart and think, what does it mean in our lives? And I love this idea of Jesus has offered this little act of compassion, a small little act, and that's where he's able to finally say it's finished. Are the two connected? I think maybe so. Actually, I'm started making notes actually for next Easter to maybe develop that even more. It's this idea, folks, right? That those small little acts of compassion, Mother Teresa's words, we can do no great things. All we can do are small things with great love. That those little acts of compassion really are where the world spins. And in the midst of all this suffering, maybe that is what, in this particular gospel account, allowed Jesus to actually move beyond hopelessness, because he could see right there the little hope for the world. This idea that there was a higher human calling beyond the blood and gore of the crucifixion. There was something much more beautiful there. And it's just a small little event, right? And you look at the absolute horror of a crucifixion, and then you look at just this being given this little bit to drink, and it's hard to equate those, but maybe this little bit to drink was even more powerful an event than the crucifixion. It's than the physical crucifixion itself. Just something to really think about there. And the call there is obvious, folks. Like, the call there is for all of us to just continue practicing small little acts of compassion as best we can, because even though in the light of tremendous evil it may seem so small, the reality is the smallness of it doesn't really matter. It's what it's saying about the human condition, what it is saying about what's ultimately true. I know yesterday, like I always I struggle so much with this whole internet world. Like I love it and I hate it at the same time. It allows me to do this, but it definitely uh puts a downer on the in-person stuff, that I enjoy so much, in-person fellowship. And so be it, right? And I can feel a little hangdog about that. And just even yesterday feeling a little hangdog about that. And somebody sent me a beautiful text, and it was just a little thing. They didn't know what a big deal it was. It was just a little small text that made a huge difference to me. That it was like, oh yeah, there's just a small little act of compassion, and just help me to breathe. Frankly, help me get over myself a little bit, a little bit. Wah, wah. And and yet it was a small little act of compassion that actually matters. So, folks, think about that today. And here's a piece of Christian New Church theology that I love. Those who live a life of love or kindness worship God, because a life of love or kindness is His life. I love that idea that if you're going to worship God, the best way to worship God is kindness. Like that's it. It's real simple. We're not a deeply pietistic faith. We believe in very much a grounded faith, and that idea that, yeah, if you want to know what worship really looks like, be kind, and try to be as kind as you can be. Those small little acts of kindness, small little acts of compassion, that's actually how the world turns, and that's how God's presence is made real in the world, including in the face of things that can be incredibly difficult. So that's my thought for today, folks. And so what we're going to do now is now we're going to move on to our meditation. And I need to be honest, as we start our meditation, I forgot my phone in the other room. So I'm going to ring the bell, let you folks have a nice little calm moment as I have a very uncalm moment racing into the other room to grab my phone. So with that, friends, let's all get a big breath. And the bell. Zoop. Back in no time there, friends. So join me in a little meditation here. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I. Be still and know that. Be still and know. Be still and. Be still. Be. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so upon the earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you, bring you peace, bring you home. Amen. All right, dear friends. So let's take a look here at what we got going. And also I should tell you folks too that we do have a small group coming up on the book Heaven and Hell. It's talking about what happens when we die. And if that has any interest to you, please shoot me a note. It doesn't start this week, it starts next week. I think it's going to be super fun, actually. All right. So let's get a little hello to folks. Uh, Patricia, great to see your heart this morning. Great to have you join us. Gene, small things with great love can bring light to the world, and that is so beautiful. And there's a quote. I'm trying to think of Margaret Mead actually was talking about small groups of people, and it's the same kind of thing. She said, "What else has actually made change in the world?" I like that idea. It's not always the great stuff. It's one could argue that it really is the small stuff. Rita, yes, it's a Monday morning church. So New Church Live, when we started, folks, trying to summarize what we did, we said we're a Monday morning church. Whatever we preach on Sunday, we want to do on Monday. So that is a great reference there, Rita. Yes, we're talking about being a Monday morning church here. Martha writes, good morning, and good morning to you, Martha. Marcus, buddy, good morning to you as well. And sure was a great service yesterday. Melissa writes, good morning, little acts of compassion every day. Yeah, and it's I think I mentioned to you guys, I read a beautiful sermon, and it's going to be preaching on it pretty soon, taking parts from it. And the guy's whole point was that that's all saints did. Saints just lived very ordinary lives, but they did it well. They found these small acts of compassion within the ordinariness of their lives, which I loved that idea. Linda writes, small things with great love. Love that. Powerful message and inspiring. I get what you mean about in person. It feels so good, more connected, but I'm really grateful to be able to do this every morning the past 2 years. Yeah, and it's it's always such a mix, right? I grew up on an unpaved road with a party line for a phone and no very little TV. And so it's just tech stuff, just a different world, right? Paige writes, good morning, and good morning to you, Paige, as well. Mary writes, I'm so grateful for the many fellows which show up with kindness from me. It's life-giving. There is no greater pain than exclusion and abandonment, a pain that Jesus felt. I would totally agree with you on that. It's just, yeah, like when you really start, Mary, right, to get into how hopeless he felt, and how just that little, like within that morass, overwhelming morass of hopelessness and all that goes along with that, here's this little small act of compassion, and that little small act, again, like a little star in a very dark night sky, but something that would have shifted everything. It's an interesting perspective on its finished, right? Katie writes, good morning, and it was a beautiful service yesterday. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. It was fun. And yes, the music was great. It was interesting, Linda, with the music, with the Joy to the World being the last song. So, I'm waiting out there usually people start coming out during the last song. People love the music, but usually they start coming out during the last song. Nobody came out until that song was all over. So people had a great time with it. So, all right, dear friends. Well, today, may you find a place to do one small act of compassion. Take care and God bless. Bye-bye.